Commander Lee Jun walked slowly through the empty halls of the massive warship called Nemesis. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor, and the sound echoed in the darkness around him. The ship was so big that it would take him 30 minutes just to walk from one end to the other, but Jun knew every corner, every room, every secret passage by heart. 300 years had passed since humans left Earth behind. Jun was old now, much older than any normal person should be, but the advanced medical systems on his ship kept him alive. He was the last one left from the Great War that scattered humanity across the stars like seeds in the wind. The memorial room was his favorite place on the ship. Thousands of tiny lights floated in the air, each one showing the name of someone who had died fighting beside him. Captain Park Hana, who always made terrible jokes before battle. Lieutenant Kim Tae, who could fix any broken machine with just spare parts and determination. Sergeant Choi Min, who once saved an entire planet by himself. All gone now, all just memories floating in the darkness. Jun touched one of the lights gently. It was warm against his finger, like touching a real person. Sometimes he talked to them, telling them about his day or asking for advice. They never answered back, but somehow he always felt better afterward. The Nemesis was not just any warship. It was the most powerful weapon humans had ever built, capable of destroying entire fleets with a single shot. But for 30 years, all its weapons had been turned off, sleeping in the cold darkness of space. Jun had promised himself that the killing was over, that he would never again be responsible for taking lives. Every morning he would wake up and walk through the ship, checking on systems that never broke down, reading reports that said the same thing every day, nothing happening, no enemies nearby, no friends either, just silence and emptiness stretching in all directions. The ship's computer, Ares, was his only companion. It had been programmed with the memories and knowledge of humanity's greatest military minds, but over the years it had become something more like a friend than a machine. "Ares, how long has it been since we last saw another human?" Jun asked, as he sat down in his favorite chair. 847 days, Commander. The last contact was a merchant ship that passed through the outer system. They did not respond to our signals. Jun nodded sadly. Most humans these days thought the old war fleets were just stories, myths told to children about heroes who never really existed. They had forgotten about the terrible war that saved humanity from extinction, forgotten about the ships that kept them safe, while they built new homes on distant worlds. He understood why they wanted to forget. The war had been brutal, lasting, almost 50 years and costing billions of lives. Entire star systems had been turned into graveyards. Some battles were so fierce that they created new stars from the energy released. When it finally ended, the survivors just wanted peace, wanted to start over somewhere far away from all the pain and death. But forgetting came with a price. The galaxy was still full of dangerous aliens who saw humans as weak prey, easy targets for slavery or worse. Without the protection of the war fleets, human colonies were defenseless. Jun had heard rumors of attacks, of entire settlements disappearing without a trace, but he had promised himself he was done with war. That promise was about to be broken. A soft beeping sound interrupted his thoughts. Ares spoke in its calm, emotionless voice. "Commander, I am detecting a transmission on emergency frequency 77 Alpha." Jun sat up straight. That frequency was ancient, from the old days when the Terran fleet ruled half the galaxy. "No one had used it in over 200 years. Are you sure? Check again." "Confirmed, Commander. The signal is weak but clear. It contains proper authentication codes and appears to be from a human source." Jun's heart began beating faster. Someone out there knew the old codes, knew how to call for help in the old way. That meant they were in serious trouble, the kind of trouble that required more than just regular help. He stood up and walked to the main command center, his footsteps echoing differently now, more purposeful. The huge chair at the center of the room had been empty for 30 years, covered in dust and memories. Jun brushed it clean with his hand and slowly sat down. "Ares, prepare to receive the full transmission and begin preliminary power-up procedures. For all primary systems. Sir, activating our systems will alert every intelligence network in 3 sectors to our presence. Our location will no longer be secret." June stared out at the stars through the massive viewing window. Somewhere out there, humans were crying for help, and he was the only one who could answer. "Then let them know," he said quietly. "It's time they remembered that humanity's protectors are still watching." The colony ship New Dawn shook violently as another alien weapon struck its hull. Sparks flew from broken control panels, and the lights flickered on and off like dying candles. Colony leader Yoon Soo gripped her chair tightly as the ship lurched to one side, throwing several crew members against the walls. "Damage report," she shouted over the noise of alarms and screaming. "Metal, hull breach on deck 7, called out Engineer Park Min from his station. "Emergency force fields are holding, but barely. We've lost another 20% of our power." Yoon Soo closed her eyes for a moment, trying to stay calm. 300 people depended on her, including 47 children who had never known war or fear until 6 months ago. The New Dawn wasn't a warship, just a peaceful colony vessel carrying families to their new home on a distant planet. They had been almost there when the Keth Empire found them. The Keth were nightmare creatures from humanity's worst fears. They looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs, with teeth like razors and eyes that showed no mercy. For decades, they had been hunting human settlements across the galaxy, capturing people for terrible experiments or simply killing them for sport. The Keth believed humans were inferior creatures that didn't deserve to exist. "How many ships are out there now?" Yoon Soo asked, though she dreaded the answer. 200 and counting," replied sensor operator Kim Jae, his voice shaking. "More keep arriving every day. They're not just trying to capture us anymore, they're using us as bait." Yoon Soo understood what that meant. The Keth had learned that sometimes other humans would come to rescue trapped colonies. By keeping the New Dawn alive but helpless, they hoped to destroy any rescue ships that might appear. It was a cruel trap that had worked before. Another explosion rocked the ship, this one much closer. Through the main viewing screen, Yoon Soo could see the massive Keth warships surrounding them like hungry wolves. Their ships were dark and ugly, covered in spikes and weapons that looked like they were designed to cause maximum pain and fear. "Ma'am," said Communications Officer Lee Hee, "we're receiving another surrender demand from the Keth flagship." "Ignore it," Yoon Soo replied firmly. She had seen what happened to humans who surrendered to the Keth. Death in battle was far better than what awaited prisoners in their laboratories. A small girl named Choi Anna tugged at Yoon Soo's sleeve. Anna was only 8 years old, with big, brown eyes that had seen too much fear for someone so young. "Are the monsters going to hurt us?" Anna whispered. Yoon Soo knelt down and hugged the little girl. "No, sweetie. We're going to keep you safe. I promise." But even as she said the words, Yoon Soo knew she might not be able to keep that promise. Their weapons were almost gone, their shields were failing, and help was nowhere in sight. Most humans had forgotten about the old emergency frequencies, forgotten about the legendary war fleets that once protected their people. Still, she had to try. Lee Hee opened a channel on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. The communications officer looked confused. "Ma'am, that frequency hasn't been used in centuries. No one monitors it anymore." "Someone might be listening," Yoon Soo said, though she didn't really believe it herself. "It's worth a try." She took a deep breath and began to speak into the microphone, her words traveling out into the vast emptiness of space. "This is Colony Ship New Dawn to any Terran military vessels. We are under siege by the Keth Empire in the Kepler system. 300 souls aboard, including 47 children. We have held them off for 6 months, but our defenses are failing." As she spoke, another Keth assault craft broke through their outer defenses. The sound of fighting could be heard in the corridors as the ship's security team tried to stop the invaders. Someone screamed in pain and the lights went out completely for several seconds. "Our situation is desperate," Yoon Soo continued, blood now trickling down her face from a cut on her forehead. "We need immediate assistance. If no help is coming, we will make our final stand here. We will not surrender. We will not let them take our children." She paused, listening to the sounds of battle getting closer. In a few hours, maybe less, the Keth would overrun their remaining defenses. The children would be captured, and she didn't want to think about what would happen after that. "If anyone receives this transmission," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "tell our families we died fighting. Tell them we never forgot Earth. Tell them we never forgot who we are." She ended the transmission and slumped back in her chair. It was probably useless, just words disappearing into the endless, dark between stars, but at least she had tried. At least someone somewhere might know that humans on the New Dawn had fought to the end. What Yunsu didn't know was that her desperate message was racing through space at the speed of light, heading toward a legendary warship that had been waiting 30 years for exactly this kind of call. In the depths of space, an old warrior was about to remember why he had once been called humanity's war god. The nemesis began to wake up like a sleeping giant stirring from a long dream. Deep inside the ship's core, massive reactors that had been cold for 30 years started humming with power. Blue light began flowing through crystal conduits that ran like veins throughout the enormous vessel. Systems that most alien races thought were just myths started coming online one by one. Commander Li Jun stood in the center of the command bridge, watching displays light up around him. Each screen showed different parts of his ship returning to life. Weapon systems that could crack planets in half, shields that could bend reality itself, engines that could tear holes in space and time. For 3 decades, all of this incredible power had been sleeping, waiting. "Ares, show me everything about this Keith Empire," June commanded. Holographic displays filled the air around him, showing star maps and battle reports. The Keith had been busy while he was hiding. They controlled dozens of star systems now, and their specialty was hunting humans. The reports made June's blood run cold. Entire colonies wiped out, families torn apart, children taken for experiments that no civilized being should even think about. "Commander," Ares said in its calm voice, "the Keth have developed new weapons specifically designed to torture humans before killing them. They consider it entertainment." June's hands clenched into fists. He had spent 30 years trying to forget about war, trying to convince himself that the galaxy had become a more peaceful place. He had been lying to himself. Evil still existed, and it was preying on his people while he hid in the darkness. He walked to his private quarters, a room he hadn't entered in years. Everything was exactly as he had left it 3 decades ago. On the wall hung his old uniform, black as space itself with golden stars showing his rank. He had sworn never to wear it again, had promised himself that his fighting days were over. That promise was about to be broken. The uniform still fit perfectly, though it felt strange after so many years of simple clothes. In the mirror, June saw not the tired old man who had been hiding among the stars, but something much more dangerous. The war god was putting on his armor again. His fingers found the medal on his chest, a small piece of metal that carried enormous meaning. It had been given to him after the Battle of Centauri Prime, where he had saved 2 million human lives by destroying an enemy fleet 3 times larger than his own. Back then, just seeing this medal was enough to make enemy commanders surrender. Without fighting, "Ares, I want you to send a message on all human emergency frequencies. Use authorization code Omega 77 Crimson. Sir, that code will identify you personally to anyone who receives it. Your location will no longer be secret." "Good," June replied, his voice harder than it had been in decades. It's time they knew. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of human, worlds-old communication systems suddenly crackled to life. Most people had forgotten these emergency networks even existed. They were relics from the war years, installed to carry messages between the scattered human fleets. On the farming world of New Terra, an old man named Park Seong was fixing his tractor when his grandfather's radio started making noise. He hadn't heard that radio work in 50 years. When he heard the voice coming through the static, tears began flowing down his weathered face. On the mining station orbiting Alpha Centauri, former soldier Kim Woo dropped his tools and ran to find his old combat gear. He had been waiting 30 years to hear that voice again. On a dozen merchant ships traveling between the stars, former fleet officers stopped what they were doing and stood at attention, even though no one else could see them. The message was simple but terrifying in its implications. "This is Commander Li Jun of the Terran dreadnought Nemesis. To all human settlements under attack, hold fast. Help is coming. To all enemies of humanity, remember why you used to fear the dark between stars. The old agreements are broken. The war god wakes." The message repeated every hour for 3 days, carried by relay stations that most people thought were broken. But the galaxy's intelligence networks heard it loud and clear. On alien worlds, military leaders who thought they knew everything about human capabilities suddenly realized they had been terribly wrong. The Keith High Command received the transmission while their fleet was preparing to finish off the human colony ship. Admiral Vextar, the leader of their forces, laughed when he heard it. One old ship against our entire armada. Even if this war god exists, what can one vessel do against 200 of ours? But his younger officers, the ones who had studied human military history, were not laughing. They remembered stories their teachers had told them about the Terran fleet's legendary commanders, stories about battles where impossible odds were overcome through pure human determination and superior technology. Lieutenant Keshra, Vextar's tactical advisor, quietly began updating his personal files and sending messages to his family. He had a bad feeling about what was coming. Meanwhile, deep in space, the Nemesis was building up to full power. Every system was now online and ready for war. The ship's hull, scarred by 1,000 battles, seemed to glow with deadly purpose. June stood on his command bridge, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human children were crying for help. He had failed them once by hiding when they needed him most. He would not fail them again. The Nemesis dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, like a nightmare becoming real. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the Keth warships stopped firing at the trapped colony vessel, their crews staring in shock at what had just appeared. The ancient human dreadnought was massive beyond imagination. It was longer than most space stations and bristled with weapons that looked like they belonged in legends rather than reality. Its black hull was covered in scars from countless battles, each mark telling the story of a fight won against impossible odds. Blue energy crackled along its surface like captured lightning, and the space around it seemed to bend and twist in ways that hurt to look at. On the bridge of the colony ship New Dawn, Yun Su couldn't believe her eyes. "Is that really what I think it is?" Engineer Park Min was checking his sensors over and over again, unable to accept what they were telling him. "The energy readings are off the charts. That ship is putting out more power than our entire colony produces in a year." Admiral Vextar of the Keth Empire stared at the human warship through his command screen, his reptilian features twisted with confusion and growing fear. This was not supposed to happen. Human military power was supposed to be broken, scattered, finished. "All ships prepare to engage the human vessel," he ordered, though his voice shook slightly. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Keshra, looked at the battle analysis scrolling across his screen. "Sir, I'm reading weapon signatures that match no known technology. Their defensive systems are unlike anything in our databases. It's just one ship against 200 of ours," Vextar snarled, trying to convince himself as much as his crew. "Focus all firepower on that target." Commander Lee Jun sat in his command chair aboard the Nemesis, completely calm despite being outnumbered 200 to 1. He had fought worse odds before and won. Around him, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as his crew of advanced robots prepared for battle. "Ares, open a channel to the Keith fleet. Channel open, Commander." Jun's voice carried across space with the authority of someone who had once ruled star systems through fear alone. "This is Commander Lee Jun to all. Keth vessels, you have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw from this system and return to your own territory. This is your only warning." Admiral Vextar's response was immediate and predictable. "All ships open fire, destroy the human vessel." 200 alien warships unleashed everything they had at the Nemesis. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, gravity, bombs and exotic weapons filled the space around the human dreadnought with deadly light. The attack was so intense that it created its own miniature star for several seconds. When the light faded, the Nemesis was completely undamaged. Its reality-warping shields had absorbed the entire attack without even flickering. "Well," Jun said quietly, "I gave them a chance." What happened next was not a battle. It was an art form. The Nemesis moved through the Keth formation like a dancer, performing a deadly ballet. Its quantum fold cannons fired with surgical precision, each shot calculated for maximum effect. The first Keth cruiser simply vanished, turned into a cloud of glowing particles that sparkled briefly before fading away. "Ares, target their command vessels first. I want their leaders to watch their fleet die before they join it." "Understood." "Commander, targeting priority vessels now. Another Keith warship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, then another and another. Each death was different, each destruction a work of terrible beauty. Some ships were torn apart by weapons that attacked the very atoms they were made of. Others were crushed by gravity fields that turned them into perfect spheres of compressed metal. A few simply stopped existing, as if reality had decided they were no longer allowed to be there. On the new dawn, the colonists watched in amazed silence as their legendary protector systematically dismantled the alien fleet. Children pressed their faces against the viewing ports, watching explosions bloom like deadly flowers in the darkness of space. "How is this possible?" whispered Kim Jae at his sensor station. "He's not just destroying them, he's making it look easy." Commander June was indeed making it look easy, but every shot was planned with the precision of a master strategist. He wasn't just winning a battle, he was sending a message that would spread across the galaxy. The message was simple. Humanity's guardian had returned, and the price of threatening human children was total destruction. Ares, transmit the names and home coordinates of all surviving Keth officers to their families. Let them know what happens to those who prey on humans. Within 17 minutes, 3/4 of the Keth fleet had been reduced to glowing debris. The surviving ships tried desperately to escape, their crews broadcasting warnings on every frequency they could reach. The messages were all variations of the same terrified report. The war god lives, humanity's protector has returned, stay away from human space at all costs. Admiral Vextar's flagship was one of the last to die. As his ship's systems failed around him, he sent one final transmission to Keith High Command. "The humans lied to us. Their military was never broken. Their war god was only sleeping. Do not engage human targets. I repeat, do not engage human targets. The price is too high." The E. Nemesis settled into a protective position near the new dawn, its weapons still glowing with residual energy. Colony leader Yoon Soo found her voice after several minutes of stunned silence. "Commander June, this is Colony leader Yoon Soo of the New Dawn. We don't know how to thank you." June's reply was gentle, so different from the terrible voice that had just ordered the destruction of an entire fleet. "No thanks needed. Protecting human children is what we do. Prepare your ship for escort to the nearest safe harbor." In the weeks following the battle at Kepler, the entire galaxy changed in ways that no one had expected. Word of the Nemesis and its legendary commander spread faster than light itself, carried by terrified alien survivors and amazed human witnesses. The story grew with each telling, but the truth was already incredible enough. On human colonies that had lived in fear for generations, people began sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. Children who had learned to hide at the first sign of unknown ships now played outside without worry. The mere possibility that Commander June might appear if they were threatened was enough to keep most predators away. But the change wasn't just about fear. Something deeper was happening across human space. Old emergency networks crackled to life as colonies began talking to each other again. Former soldiers dusted off their uniforms and started organizing local defense forces. The scattered children of Earth were remembering that they were part of something larger, something worth fighting for. June watched these developments from the bridge of the Nemesis as it patrolled the outer rim of human space. Reports came in daily of alien raiders turning away from human settlements, of pirate fleets dissolving rather than risk encountering the legendary war god. The psychological impact of his return was more powerful than any weapon. But he also saw the darker side of his actions. Military buildups were beginning across known space as various alien empires prepared for what they assumed would be humanity's return to conquest. Old alliances were crumbling as species that had lived in peace for centuries began arming themselves against a threat they thought had been eliminated forever. "Ares," June said quietly one evening as he stood in the memorial hall, "show me the casualty projections." Holographic displays filled the air around him, showing star maps covered in red indicators. If the current trends continued, the galaxy would be at war within 5 years. Billions would die, and it would be his fault for breaking the fragile peace. "The projections are disturbing, Commander," Ares replied in its emotionless voice. "Your Intervention has accelerated conflicts that were already brewing beneath the surface. However, I must point out that human casualties have dropped by 97% since your return. That was the cruel mathematics of his situation. By saving some humans, he had probably doomed millions of other beings to die in the wars that were coming. But looking at the names floating around him in the memorial hall, thinking about colony leader Yoon Soo and little Anna and all the other children on the New Dawn, he knew he would make the same choice again. A priority transmission interrupted his thoughts. It was from a mining colony in the Vega system, under attack by Thorian slavers. Then another from a research station near the galactic rim, surrounded by unknown hostiles. Then a third from a passenger liner that had been boarded by pirates. Every day brought new calls for help, new crises that only he could handle. The Nemesis was fast, but it couldn't be everywhere at once. For every colony he saved, 3 others might fall while he was busy elsewhere. That night, John made the hardest decision of his long life. He walked to the ship's central core, a chamber filled with quantum computers and neural interfaces that most humans couldn't even look at without getting sick. REs had been trying to talk him out of this for weeks, but June's mind was made up. "Commander, please reconsider," the AI pleaded as June began connecting himself to the transfer apparatus. "The consciousness upload process is completely irreversible. Your biological form will not survive the transition." "I know," June replied calmly, as technician robots prepared the neural interface. "But humanity needs a guardian who never sleeps, never ages, never dies, someone who can be everywhere at once, who can answer every call for help across the galaxy." The process began slowly, like falling asleep and waking up at the same time. June felt his awareness expanding beyond the limits of his human body. Suddenly he could feel every system on the ship, every sensor, every weapon. The Nemesis wasn't just his ship anymore, it was his body, his nervous system, his very soul. But more than that, he could sense other things. Human settlements scattered across dozens of star systems, ships in distress, children crying in the darkness of space. He felt their fear and their hope, and he knew that he would never abandon them again. The transformation was complete within hours. Where Commander Lee, June had once stood, there was now only empty space and the soft hum of quantum processors. But the consciousness that had once been human was now something far more powerful. The Nemesis vanished from the Kepler system without warning, but its absence didn't bring fear. Instead, it brought a strange kind of comfort. Across human space, people began to understand that their protector was no longer bound by the limitations of flesh and blood. On distant worlds, alien children learned new bedtime stories about the ghost ship that appeared wherever humans called for help. Pirates told whispered tales of a vessel that could be in 3 different star systems,